Welcome back. I think I've done a little bit of thinking how to fix this multi-input problem. And I also downloaded a little app that I can turn on to show you what buttons I'm pressing like that, so that when we're testing the input and stuff, you guys can see what I'm actually doing, instead of me having to tell you every time. Not that, that bugged me or anything. I just think it'd be nice. So right up here, we have if only left is down, then we get left priority. And if only right is down, we get right priority. Then if left is down, and then we press right, then we should get right priority. But in that scenario, both left and right will be held down, and then on this line, both right and left will be held down, which will overwrite right priority. So we needed a way to not overwrite that. So I'm thinking that if left is down, then we have left priority, right? So then we say, and not right priority, which priority. So now right priority will only be set if right is held and left is held, and we already have left priority. That way, they won't overwrite each other because we're checking on what's the current priority, and if left is down first, left will be the priority. Therefore, when right is down, it'll become right priority. And then if right is down, right priority will be true. So if we're if right is down, then we're right priority, then if left is down, we'll get left priority. So this little change here should prevent both of these lines from executing if both inputs are held, because it only one will, depending on what our priority is, we'll get the appropriate opposite priority. I'm pretty sure, because let's see. So if left is held, we're in left priority. Then if right is held, right priority becomes true. Then, oh shoot, it's the same problem. Because then right priority will be true. Shoot. That won't fix it. Because then right priority will be true, and then right is held down, and then we're still at right priority. Then it'll swap it back to false. Dang it, I thought that would fix it. It's the same problem. Because right priority is getting set to true here, which means this very next line of code will swap it back to false if both are held. What do we do? What do we do? Yeah, I'm sure this is not going to work. Yeah, we should. Oh, sorry, before I do that, I need to turn on key casting for y'all, and then. Oh, shoot. My key casting doesn't go over love. Sorry, guys. I thought that would work. Yeah, it doesn't go over. Shoot. I'm gonna have to figure out another app then to cast my inputs and stuff, because that doesn't go over the full screen of Lua. In our main, we can say full screen gets false. And maybe, yeah. So now you guys can see what, that's kind of a disaster, huh? Seeing all those inputs. But at least you guys can see what I'm doing. Okay. This won't fix it. This doesn't fix it. How do we do this? How do we only give the logic for the last input? Because how do we do this? What's overriding is that since left will be held and then right will be held, the same logic is being applied to swap it the other way. Even though I'm saying I've got it in a nested if loop saying if right is down, then if left is down, almost as if to be like if left is held after right. But the game doesn't work like that, or because in the game loop, you know, it's on every frame. This is running every frame. So if both inputs are down, it doesn't know which order they were held in. It just knows that they are held. So it's not giving us what we want. So we need some sort of this is what I was trying to fix with this right priority idea. But we need like a last input. But that still doesn't help us because this logic is flawed. Because we don't know what the last input was. We just know that currently both inputs are held. So like if left is down, then right is down, then we need to say, hey, right was our last input. But if we try to do that same thing, saying, hey, if left is down, or if right is down, then left is down, then left is our last input. But according to the game, since it runs every frame, all it knows is both of those keys are down. Then whatever the second code block is will overwrite whatever the first code block is. So shoot, I don't know how to fix this. How do we determine what the last input was? Like maybe we can say maybe we have a counter that's counting the number of inputs being held, and if left is down, increment the counter by 1, and then upon release subtract the 1. Then if right is down, increment it another, and then swap basically like if if we have a little counter that says, like directional input counter, if left is down, directional input counter gets 1. Then if directional input counter is 1 and right is pressed, then we know that right was pressed after left was pressed. Does that make sense? Then we can say, hey, now the counter is 2 and our priority is right, where we wouldn't be changing the priority unless the counter is already at 1, meaning either left or right was pressed by the time the other opposite direction was pressed. So we can say something like, if left is down and counter is 1, or if left is down, increment counter by 1. Then if right is down and counter is equal to 1, then we set right priority. Would that be any different? Because then right would be down, our counter would be 2. It's the same problem, because then right would be down, our input counter would be 2 still. We would even increment it further, which would be a mistake. Hoi, 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 hoi. How do we do this? How do we only get the last input? The most recent input? Do we have a table? We have a table that gets... We have a table that puts in... See, and then it gets... Yeah, we have to only check for the, the left and right input. And we need to say... Oh, wait, I don't know how to do it. I just keep running into the same problem. So if left is down... Gosh. Because as far as the game's concerned, it doesn't know what was pressed in what order. It just knows that they're both pressed. So how do we tell it what order it's pressed in? And we would need to flush it so that you can input another direction and whatnot. It's something like... I'm just going to type some pseudocode and see if I can't piece something together. Because we're trying to say, hey, if left is pressed and right is pressed, then, then determine last input or most recent input and set priority to most recent input. So instead of these two blocks where one can overwrite one another, we have one block that says if they're both down, well, if left is down, then if right is down, determine or set our write priority to true. Not what I wanted. Otherwise, see, this doesn't work either, because if right is pressed, yeah, if we press both of them, all this knows is that, hey, both of them are down. It doesn't say what order they're pressed in. So how do we determine what order they were pressed in? Like, if, like, only one, we need like a table that can only hold one input, and that gets populated with the most recent was pressed. And it gets flushed upon the release of that. No, it doesn't get flushed on release. It gets flushed on if the other one was pressed. So it's like we need a, it's like we need a table, populate table with directional input value, or whatever you want to call it, pressed last, or pressed most recent. So it's like, how do we say, like we need to give ourselves a table called last input, and we're gonna, if only left is down, then our last input, well, I don't know if we don't really need to populate the table upon one input. We only need to populate it on both inputs, because that's the only time we're trying to do something special with it. So if both are pressed, see, how do we okay, so maybe we do say, like, hey, if only left is pressed, then our last input gets, how do you table.insert, how do you do this? We want to insert the key of is down. Of left. So, like, do we insert just a string called left? Because then we also need to remove the left input. Let me look up what this table.insert is again. I remember learning a little bit about this in the CS50 game dev course. I'm just forgetting the usage. So it takes a table and it takes a string. And then how do you remove? The same idea. Table.remove takes in a table, and then it takes in a index. But I think the index can be replaced with a hard-coded string. Is that right? Let me see. let me pull up um, 50 Bird, which was the Flappy Bird code, because I think that's where I remember it from. And it'd probably be under, I don't know, pipes? No. Might be under the play state. Right here, table.insert. And then how do they do remove? Table.remove takes in a table and then takes in. See, they have it like takes in a key. Huh. So this needs to take in a table, which would be our last input table. We give it a value. To insert into the table. And my understanding is anything that gets inserted at the very first index, which will push back everything that's currently in the table over 1. But the thing is, we need to only populate this table with the lastmost input. So we need to basically flush the table anytime there is an input. And then only insert whatever that recent input is. Does that make sense? So then we can say if write is pressed, meaning our last input was right, then if left is pressed, then we need to flush that table again. And the curly braces just says that the table of the variable last input gets set equal to, no values, like an empty table. So that's what the just two curly braces means. Then we're gonna say is this the same freaking problem? Because no. Because we're setting the last input to whatever's pressed secondly, which in this case is left, but oh my gosh. I think these need to be double quotes for a string literal. Is that right? I don't know. But I feel like we're so if only left is pressed, our last input table just gets the value left, or gets, one value in the table of last input called left. If only right is pressed, we wipe the table, only put in right. And then if right is down and left is down, see, we need to check like if right is down and the last, hold on. How do we do this? How do we do this? What am I thinking? We need to come up with something so that our same problem doesn't happen, which is if both inputs are held, that the second logic overwrites this first one. So we need to say, like, you know, if how would we check to see what's in the table? Well, since the table should only have one input and everything is one indexed in Lua, all we have to do is say last input at bracket 1. If that happens to be left, then if right is held, wipe the table, put in right. Does that make sense? Would that overwrite? Shoot. Let's see. If right is held, then if left is held, we're going to wipe the table, we're going to insert left. Then we're going to say if left is held, if this is where we need to check the last input. We need to say if last input index 1 is equal to what, right? If left is down and the last input, see, look, we need we need to only do this if two inputs are held. So we need to say, like, if right is down and left is down. Oh my god. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. Like, in order for two buttons to be held, one button needs to be held first. Not necessarily, because, hold on. Because it would be possible for on one frame, no inputs being held, and on the next frame, both inputs are held. In which case, what do we want to do? In that case, we should just default to going right or something. But if they're held in succession, then we need to only give it the value that was pressed most recently. So if right is down and left is down, then we need to check what the current last input was, and we just need to set it to the opposite. So we need to say if both are held, then if our last input at index 1, if it is left, if it's left, that means right was pressed after left, because left can only get populated if just left is pressed. Hold on. Shoot. This is wrong. How do you do this? If right is down and left is down, so we're not flushing, right now we're not flushing our table upon release of input. It's just inserting a string of the most recent input into the table, but only if only one button was pressed, either left or right. So if both keys are pressed, then as long as a key was ever pressed alone or in quick succession, then our last input at index 1 should be populated with either left or right. And if our table of last input's value at index 1 is equal to left, then we need to wipe our table and swap it? Yeah, because it can only be left if left was pressed first. Then if right is pressed and left is still pressed, then we need to insert only actually, I don't think, wait. I'm trying to think if I need to even use the assignment operator here, or if I can just call that table.insert function, which takes in a table. Yeah, if it takes in the table, then we shouldn't need to say that the table gets. We should be able to just say table.insert. Yeah, we don't need to say pipe. Yeah, okay. We can just call that. So we can say just insert the value left into the table last input. Okay. Wait, this is nonsense. Okay. So if both of them are pressed and its current last input was left, then flush the table and put in right, because this table can only get populated with left if left was pressed last, and if right is down and left is down and last input was left, that means right was pressed after left. Therefore, we want our last input to be right, the string right, and correct. We want it to be correct as well. But then we need to say, if our last input, if our last input was right, do the opposite. We need to wipe that input table Oh shoot, I just thought of something. If our last input was right, oh God. So this is on the first frame that both are held down. It'll say, hey, what's your current input? If it's left, then swap it with right. Otherwise, if it's right, swap it with left. But get this, on the very next frame, right and left will still be held down, and we already swapped. Then we would say, oh, is your last input right? In that case, since they're both held down, give it left now. No? Hold on. So both are pressed. I'm giving the last input to be right if our last input is left. On the very next frame, last input will be right. Then we're going to swap it with left. So every frame, it'll be swapping. Which is completely incorrect. We only want to swap it How do we do this? How do we do this? Oh my God. It's like we only want to assign we only want to give if more than one button is pressed, if more than one button is down, we only want to assign the latest input to the table. We don't want to do it every frame. We just want to do the latest input. So how do we only do this logic if only do this logic one time it's like we need to say like, hey, if both keys are held, then if both keys are held, we need to assign only one value until a key is released. Otherwise, it'll just swap every single frame. So how do we say, we need to say something like, God dang. We need to say something like, if both keys are down, then if what do we call this variable? What do we say? Like if both keys are down, then if what do we say? Basically, I'm trying to say if both keys are held down, determine what was pressed last, assign the proper value to our table called last input, and then don't do anything, don't assign another value to that table until both of those aren't down. So like one of them is released. So if they're both down, we need to set a flag, or we need to set it to its appropriate value. Then we need to set a flag called like last input locked in or something. Last input locked gets true. And we need to say that we only assign a value if our last input locked in is false. And this isn't a very good variable name for this. I just don't know what else to put. Because we basically want to lock our last input upon both inputs being pressed, because we only want our last input table to get the value of the last input. So we need to set this last input locked to false upon any release of left or right. So we're going to say and we need to say this up here. Initialize it to false. Then so this line of code that assigns an input upon both keys being pressed can only happen if our last input locked is false. And we're going to lock it upon setting it to either one of these values, depending on what was pressed last. So then we need to flush it upon release. So we need to say if our keyboard was released left or right, if either one were released, then we can't have our last input locked. Is that right? If either of those keys were released, our last input locked gets false. Then if multiple inputs are pressed, then we'll have to lock in a new last input, which is correct. Okay. So I guess now the thing to do would be to set our priority. See, so the priority is to toggle which direction. Wait, hold on. I feel like we don't need this right priority anymore. We just need to check last input. Is that right? Because the right priority was just supposed to say, like, right priority gets true if right was pressed after. But now that we've done this last input locked stuff, I don't think we need this right priority stuff anymore. I already noticed a mistake here. We're, oh no, that's okay. This should be okay. Because we're initializing last input to an empty table before the update function. So it won't be flushing it every frame, which is good. So yeah, this line of code should only execute once as long as both inputs are pressed and our last input wasn't already locked. So like this line of code makes it so that this only happens once until it's released. Okay. So I'm not sure how I feel about on every, like, for example, if I'm just holding right, then every single frame I'm flushing the last input table and adding the value right. Every single frame, even though, you know, like the correct last input is in there, but I'm flushing it and reassigning it every single frame, which I don't think is very well designed. I guess I am just curious if this idea even kind of works in the first place, and then we can worry about optimization, right? It's like, do it, then do it right, then do it fast. Or so I've heard on programming. It's like, just get it to work, then get it to work correctly. I guess being fast is part of being correct, or not really. I don't know. Okay, so let's see if our right priority is being used anywhere other than right there. No. So I'm gonna get rid of this right priority because now we're doing this last input locked sort of deal. And then we'll have to say like, this is our new priority system. We check the value of our last input, and if that value is left, then we have left priority. If the value is right, then we have right priority. And left priority will only be left if just left is down, or if left was the last input upon already holding right. Yeah. Does that make sense? Would that work? So now we need to go into our, now we need to say, you know, all of this stuff, we need to say, we need to check our priority. Is that right? Because I think we need to check our priority. Do we have to check our priority on every single input? Because holy crap. I guess let's just try it on, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? The other thing I'm thinking of is like part of me before I start to do the logic, I just want to make sure the right priority or the last input locked is working correctly. So what I'll do is under our debug, I'll say last input locked. And then print out the value of our last input table at index I, which, not I, index 1. Because I clear it every time, there should only ever be one index in there, but I'm not checking and making sure there's only one index in there because I'm not sure I can do a loop over a table to print out every single input in the table within this sort of formatted string concatenation table that is our debugging info. So I'm just gonna, actually this should be a string. So I shouldn't need to convert it. Let's see if, oops. Command Shift K, no? What was it? Yeah, Command Shift K. Maybe we need to do Option Command Shift K to turn on our key log. So let's see, concatenate a nil value, 68. Okay. So since last input doesn't initially get assigned anything, it should be whatever direction we start facing. Well, no, shoot, god dang. Let's just initialize it to right for debugging purposes. So it's not a nil value. So if I press left once, our last input should be left. Okay. And then if I press left again, it should only ever be left. But what you're not seeing is every time I press left, it takes the value out and then reassigns left in that table. But at least it's working. So I'm going to hold left and then press and hold right. Then our last input locked should be right. Yes. Now if I let go of right again, our last input should be left. Okay. And then likewise, if we're going right, then I hold left, our last input should be only left. Yes. And then if I let go of right, it should be left. Okay. Okay, so it looks like that's working appropriately. Because anytime I just tap left or right, it's setting it to the appropriate thing. And then if I do more than one input, it does the last input. So that looks like it's working. So now we can say, now we can say in our direction, or our dx logic, whatever you want to call it. And dx is just delta x change in x. So it's just velocity, basically, if you've been curious about that. Leftward velocity, left and rightward velocity. So what I'm going to do is only do this logic as long as the last input is corresponding with whatever input is being pressed. So like we have to say, we have to check our last input table at index 1, and if it is equal to the string right, and that's so that we don't have more than one input trying to change things. Because remember, we were like, if we were holding both directions, it was like either skidding to a stop or like slowly going. When it was like the right was giving its right dx and left was giving its left dx, which was kind of counteracting each other, and then it was just like only slowly moving. One thing I do want to change before we get too far into this is right here. I think this should be a little bit higher, like 0.15 instead of 0.12. Just because it was a little too slow walking and we want it to be a little faster. So we need to go through every input and say, hey, also check your last input. Because we're hoping that if right is pressed, then we hold left, we'll only execute our left logic because our last input was left. We want to ignore the right input if both inputs are held and left was pressed after right was. I think that's right. So that's what all of this was to fix, We only want one input at a time. We want only one logic. Does that make sense? Because one button press can do so many things in this game, we want to only execute one set of instructions per input, basically, because we don't want anything overriding anything else. So, and that's where we were running into trouble with our both inputs being pressed, is it was saying, hey, right is pressed and left is pressed. So it was executing both lines of code, but we did not want that. I don't think we need to do that for the aerial logic because I don't know. The aerial logic wasn't messing up if both was pressed. I guess if both are held, since this is not the continuous input read, we only do it on a was pressed. So if we hold it, it'll just, if we're in the air and we hold both inputs, it'll just face us the direction of our latest input. So I think that's correct. Okay, so now that we added all of that, just making sure it's correct. We missed this. Okay. Let's give that a shot. Let's turn our keylogger on. Okay. So I'm going to hold left, and if we skid to a stop, then turn, then move left, we'll have succeeded. See, look, it still says last input locked is left, which is correct. Like, that's what we should be doing. Sorry, that's so much freaking lines of input getting over the screen there. I don't know how to change that. Line break. I don't know. Oh, shoot. It didn't quite work, but I don't know why, because so like right there, our left input locked is our last input locked is left, which, oh lordy, that's correct. Because our last input was left. But if our last input is left, we don't want to do any right. We want to ignore the fact that right is being pressed right now, because our last input locked is left. So when I let go of right, and this keylogger isn't even showing that I'm holding both inputs right now. It just shows I'm holding left. So they've got some last input locked logic that's working better than mine. Well, I mean, mine's working. It's just the logic isn't working. So like, if I'm going to let go of right, and that shouldn't change our behavior, but it does. Because look, our last input locked is still left. That's weird. My leg disappeared. Our last input, like, yeah, if our last input is left, we want to basically ignore all the right inputs, which is what I was doing here. Like, this line of code can only execute if right is down and my last input was right. But since my last input was left, it should bypass that code. So like, letting go of right shouldn't be changing our direction. It should be changing our direction upon our last input held being left. So maybe we're missing. Yeah, maybe we're missing this. You know what? I don't know. So this stuff has nothing to do with inputs. Let me just toggle this off and see if that does anything. Because that actually, this was supposed to be, yeah, I don't think we need this, because this looks like it's just, I was trying to do the if left is down, then if right is down, move right. But then, yeah, I think all of that was busted. So let's just see if that might fix it, because that might be why. Oh, that might be why it wasn't working. And what's weird is, like, now this is saying our right priority is nil, which before, well, first of all, I thought we already initialized it to right, so I don't know why it's nil. Oh, no, nil is right priority. Okay, yeah. But, well, it was weird. We were getting a nil value, or Lua crashed our last time we did it because our last input was nil. But now it has no problem printing out nil. So I think that's kind of weird. Anyways, Let's see if this works. Holding right, and I'm going to hold left. That's it! I'm holding right still. I'm holding right. Oh! And then I let go of left, and I'm still... Look at this. I'm not holding anything, but my last input locked. Oh, yeah. Hold on. That's almost it, though. I'm holding right, and then I'm going to hold left. I should turn and move left. That's correct. That's good. But now if I let go of left and still hold right, I should skid to a stop and go to the right, but that's not happening. So why is it that right is down, my last input locked is right, and I'm still not stopping? Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. That's sick. That's sick. That's okay. So I'm holding left. I'm gonna hold right. We should stop and turn and go to the right. Yes. But now if I let go of right, I need to skid to a stop because my last input locked is left. But it knows left is down, and it knows my last input locked is left, yet I'm still moving to the right. But if I let go and tap it, it does it correctly. So how do I do? It's weird because it knows my last input was right, but it doesn't skid to a stop. Like I'm holding right, and it knows I'm holding right, and it knows my last input locked was right, but it doesn't stop until I let go and press it again. That's huge. That's most of the problem fixed. I just don't get why upon release, maybe there's something. No, it's setting the correct last input. Therefore, my last input. Okay, so like my idea to debug this is to just find part of me I'm thinking we need to find the line of code that should be operating when I let go of the direction. Gosh, it's so complicated because like what I'm trying to say is if I hold one direction, keep that direction held while I hold another direction, and then let go of the second direction but keep the first direction held, it should trigger a skid when it's not. So our skid logic, where's our skid logic? Where? Why? We're wanting to see where skid is true. That's all commented out. Here. Oh, look at this. Oh, no, I had it. Yeah, and last input. Oh, who was pressed. This is the freaking problem. But remember, if we change this to is down, then we're in that perpetual skid. Because the skid is only triggering upon a press of left. But there's another scenario in which we need to skid, and it's when we're, in this case, we're moving right, and right is held. Or, oh, no. Okay, so we're moving left and left is held. Then we move right and right is held. Then we're moving right. Then skid should trigger upon release of right. So if we only need to also do, we also need to trigger skid to get true. We also need to trigger if that skid gets true if our let me think about this. Holy crap. So we hold left, we go left. We hold right, we go right. So both need to be held. So both of these need to be is down. Because we can't just change this to is down, because then if we hold left, then skid will always be true, and then we're in that perpetual skid problem. But we only need to change skid to once upon release after both inputs are held. So we need to say if both inputs are held, then right is released. We also need to trigger skid to true. But we also need to check our last input? No. Well, shit. No, we only need to... Triggering skid to true will slowly stop our DX. So I think we just need to trigger skid. I don't think we need to... Oopsie. I don't think we need to also ask what our last input is, because our last input's going to be correct there because it has been working fine. So we just need to say if both are down, then if right is released, self-skid gets true. And we need to do the corresponding skid for this way, where we need to say, hey, if both are pressed. Oopsie, where is it? Here. If both are pressed, then actually, hold on one sec. Yeah, if I didn't give this any value, then if right is released, skid gets true. Yeah, and that's for moving to the right. And right was released, then skid gets true. Okay, and that should only happen once, because once you release right, skid can't be set equal to true again, because right is not also down still, because it can only happen if right was released. So upon skid getting true, only left will be down, and then we will only have our last input being left. We'll skid to a stop, and then since our last input was left, upon stop it'll turn and go to the left. So we also need to say for the right here, was released, not is down. If left was released, then we also need to skid. And that's for moving to the left. Okay. So that shouldn't mess up our perpetual skid. That shouldn't bring back that problem, but it should skid upon release. You guys, if that works. If that works. I see you. 648. An ostrich. We need a end right here. And we need an end. Oh, we had it right there. Okay. Let's try it. Okay, I'm gonna hold left. We should turn and go left. Yes, yes. I'm holding right still too, by the way. Now, upon releasing left, still holding right, I should skid to a stop, then turn and go right. It's not working. Let me try the other way. Nope. See, it's got the last input in there. Let me just see. If this might help us out. I don't think it would, though. No. It's so close. It's so close. I thought that would be it. Is there self.skid turned on? We need to turn on our self.skid. Oh, we don't even have that. Here, I'll do self.skid, toString player1, .skid. Okay. So we'll see if skid is even getting triggered. Okay, so skid is false. I've got both inputs held. I'm going to let go of left. It should say skid is true, and it doesn't. It only does when I press it one more time after letting go. So something is faulty. Something is faulty in my execution here. Oh God, I need to delete all of these commented out stuff. Our skid logic is down here. What the heck? What the heck? Where is it? Right here. Skid flag. And then skid flag. I think this can never execute because this goes on every frame. So on one frame, they're both down. This will evaluate to false because they're both down. Then if I release it, this will never get executed because it's not is down. So I think this just needs to say, hey, if left is down and right was released, then skid gets true. Same with the left one. So instead of is down, because yeah, both of those things can't be true on the same frame. It can't be is down and was released on the same frame, so that was never executing. And released can only be released if left was previously held on a frame. So, oh, this is right. Right was released. Wait. Yeah. Wait. So we're moving to the right. Left is down and right was just released. Then we should skid. Okay. Let's try that. Okay, holding right, holding left as well. That's right. Now I'm going to let go of left. Let's hopefully skid. Why? Oh, that one almost worked. That way worked. Hold on. It didn't make the sound, but it did skid to a stop, which is kind of weird. Why would that be different? Okay. See, this is both. We just need to figure out, we need to write down both. Right is held first. We're moving to the right. Then left and right is held. Then we skid to a stop and move left. Then if right is held and left was released. So if right is held and left is released, and we're moving to the left. So we're moving to the left. If right is held and left was released, then we skid. And then the other way is we hold left, we move left, we hold left and hold right, we will end up going right. Then if we hold left and let go of right, we should skid. So the moving right one, which is this one, needs to be if we're holding left and right is released. Okay, yeah, and that's the one that did work. And I think this is why it wasn't making sound. Because if skid is true, we just want to play the skid sound. We don't need to check the last input. So that might fix it. Okay. Holding right. Holding left, we should stop and go left. And I'm still holding right. That's good. Now I'm going to let go of left and keep right held. We should skid to a stop and then start going right. Yep. Okay. It's not making the skid still, but So holding left, I'm going to keep left held, hold right. We stop and go to the right. That's correct. Now I'm going to keep left held and let go of right. We should skid and then start to go to the left. Yes, that's it. That's it. Now we do need, I don't know why skid isn't playing. Why is skid? If we're skidding, it should play the skid sound no matter what. But it doesn't upon the multiple inputs. I think what we can do is, if skid is true, stop your footstep sounds. But if skid is ever true, we just need to play the skid sound for as long as skid is true. Is that right? We can just say and we shouldn't need to say skid stop. Well, actually, yeah, we do need to say it. But the thing is, we have if our dx is 0, we stop our skid sound. So that should fix it. Now we should skid upon the multiple input problem. That's it. That's it. Let me just test some other stuff and make sure it's not broken. We can walk slow. We can stop. We can walk slow, and we can hold it a little longer to stop and turn, but not go. We can walk slow and then stop and turn and go. And for the other ways as well. And then we can keep, what happens if we just try to hold both left and right at the same exact time? It just does some input. It does just going, no, it doesn't do just left. Right now I'm just kind of spamming a bunch of buttons to see if I can get it to mess up. Whoa, did you see that? Oh my god, this is... I can't get it to mess up. I'm like spamming, I'm playing not nice at all, trying to get it to perpetually skid or do something stupid. And let's see if we can do the... If we're in the air, facing the other direction, we land and we turn, okay? That's correct. Okay. Then we also need to, if we're going fast enough to skid and we're in the air and we hold left while in the air, we should skid to a stop. And that isn't happening. So like I'm in the air moving fast enough to skid, I'm holding left, upon landing, oh, look at that. Our feet don't work and our skid isn't working in the air for that. So and I remember we turned this off. We had a right here. No. We'll have to figure that out. Right here. I turned this off, but this was our logic to do just exactly that, to skid while in the air. You know, you're moving one direction fast enough to skid, and then you're holding the opposite direction upon landing. That's it. That's it. Oh, see, that's why we turned it off, is because this perpetual skid. So now that we have our last input table, can we fix this? I think we can. Okay. So now instead of perpetually skidding, this won't quite fix it. Well, no, it will. Wait, no. Because it's like we only want to do it upon landing. So let's do this. Let's move this logic to we only want to do it upon landing, but yeah, we only want to do it upon landing. So where is our grounded getting false? See, and we have to refactor the grounded logic, because right now it's hard coded to the ground floor, but it needs to be hard coded to any collidable platform that has a top. Well, yeah, other than bad guys and stuff. Any platform collidable. So I'm gonna say right here, if if our y is at the ground, we're going to set our grounded to true, and that's where we need to say if, let me just, actually, no, yeah, that was right. So this is not the final input, or the final place, living place of this. This logic, but we haven't refactored it just yet. Let's see if that fixes it, because that's upon grounding. If left is held, we're going to skid, or right is held, depending which direction we're moving. I'm just trying to see if we can get in that perpetual skid mess up again. Doesn't seem like it. Okay. Okay. So I'm holding left, we should skid. Yep. Cool. Okay. We need to be moving fast enough to skid. And then if we hold multiple inputs upon landing, oh, it just does the most recent input. Oh, and then we're missing out on our footsteps if we're moving a certain speed as well. That's right, man. That's right. So for whatever reason, we're not playing our footsteps because we stopped our footsteps sound upon landing or upon taking off. So we have a footstep sound for while we're grounded, but we don't have a way to turn on footsteps sounds if... Is that only if I mess up the landing there? Huh. Okay, I think it's only, the footstep sound's only messing up if I hit the collidable from the top. No, I can't quite recreate that. It has something to do with taking off, right? I can't really recreate that. I'll have to do some more testing with that, why it wouldn't do footsteps. But hey, that's huge. We got... And see, that's messed up because it's detecting a right collision when it should be detecting a bottom collision. I just haven't done the bottom collision logic just yet because it was more complicated and I wanted to get the multiple inputs solved first, which now we have it solved. That's huge. That's awesome. That's really cool. I can't... Oh no. Did that really just happen? If I double tap, the opposite direction while I'm supposed to skid, he just gets stuck in skidding. Let me see if the landing skid is what is making that mistake. No. For some reason, oh, what the heck? It's busted again. It's busted. I was just stress testing it and it was working fine. And now I can when I double tap it, for whatever reason, skid isn't getting triggered to false because our dx is not going to 0. Why is it not going to 0? If our skid is true, we should be going to 0. If our skid is true, we should be going to 0. Why are we not? Where is it? Where do we say? Oh, I'm going to lose my mind. We were so close. Here. See, look, if our dx is greater than 0 and we're skidding, we subtract 0.08 from our current dx, update our x position by our current dx. If self dx is 0, that's when you stop skidding. So at some point, where our skid is true, but we're not getting a slower dx. Our self dx is a positive. If we're moving right and we're skidding, our dx gets clamped to 0. Wait a second. If it's smaller, oh no, that's moving left. I'm moving left and I'm skidding. Our dx will get higher by 0.08 until it's 0. So this needs to be math.max. If we're moving right bigger than 0, then we need to get the smaller of two numbers. No, I had that right. Because we want, if this is a positive number, we want it to just be 0. We want it to just stop. But if we're moving to the left and we're skidding, our dx will get higher by 0.08. Huh. No, this is wrong. If we're moving to the right and we're skidding, you're going to give us the higher of two numbers, one of which is our current dx subtracted by 0.08, and the other number is 0. So yeah, so this will, since dx is a negative number, adding a 0.08 should still make it a negative number. Therefore, math.min will return the negative number, which should be our dx that is getting bigger every frame that we skid. Until they hit 0, then 0 is returned. And if self dx is 0, we stop skidding. So why are we not getting a dx 0? Why is our dx getting stuck at like 0.08? So look, tap it twice, no? Okay. So it only gets stuck in skid if right is held and my dx is greater than 0. And I double tap left. So you know what? Let me put the, we don't want to give it its right logic if we're skidding right here. We had okay. So we don't want to update its logic if it's see, I feel like that should be down here. Let me just try this. Because now if we are holding right and our less input is right, and we're facing right and we're grounded, and we're not skidding, give us our updated dx. Because if we are skidding, we need to slow to a stop. But I feel like there's another scenario in which right is held. That's if our dx is 0, so that shouldn't be a problem. And this is if our dx is in the speed tier 1, which we shouldn't even be skidding, so that should be okay. Okay, let's see if that fixes it. Okay, holding right, I'm going to double tap left and keep right held. We shouldn't skid, or what should happen is we should skid to a stop and then stop skidding and then start going to the right again instead of getting stuck perpetually skidding. So I'm going to tap left twice. Okay. Okay. I think that's right. I'm going to stress test it. Trying to get it stuck in skid again. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. We did it. We did it. We've got multiple input problems solved. I can't get it to mess up anymore. At least while we're grounded. There might be some other weird stuff. But from what I can tell, the limited air options we have, I can't get it stuck. I can't get it stuck in perpetual skid, no matter how much I try to mess with it. Yes. Yes. That's huge. That's huge. That's huge. And that was, that's a hard feature. that was a hard feature for me to figure out. But that's how the original is. It's like, you know, it only does your latest input. So right now I've got both held. I let go of one, it will skid. And you can kind of do left and right, but it doesn't mess up any of the other logic. It just does the most recent input logic. And if I release both of them at the same time, I don't skid. But if I release them, you know, a little offset, it will skid. So I guess my question is, will I skid if I press both at the same exact time? And since right is pressed, it makes sense that I would stop on the input. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Wow. Okay. I'm so thrilled we got that working. About time we fix that. Now, this is going to be next. Is our flapping in the air, changing our direction while we're in the air if we're flapping. So that'll be next. That's huge. It's feeling really good. We might want to change the stop timer to be a little bit less than a fifth of a frame, because the original was really hard to get it consistent, so that makes me think it was just faster than a fifth of a frame. Because I can pretty reliably just stop in mine, where I can't do that on the original. Sometimes it turns, and sometimes it turns and walks when I'm just trying to stop. So I think it's faster, but that's an easy fix. We could literally change one value in our constants. We change our input lag right here. Instead of 0.2, we just put 0.1 or whatever. And it'll be, actually, why don't we try that right now? Put 0.1. Yeah, that feels better because that it turns and stops faster now too. Because the input lag, it doesn't have to wait a fifth of a frame, it waits a tenth of a frame before it turns. Yes, yes. I think that's good. I'm happy with the multiple input controls and the general input controls. I can't get stuck in perpetual skid. My DX is correct in the air and upon landing and upon holding multiple inputs. And I don't get any bad results, unwanted results holding multiple inputs. It's on that last input table now. I'm not so thrilled about checking or flushing the last input table every single frame, just because it seems like a waste to me, or unnecessary to me, but I'm not really sure what to do otherwise. I'm not sure how to make that more efficient, but just get it working first, then we can do it right and make it elegant and everything. So at least it's working. It's working. That's huge. So we're going to get add everything. We're going to get commit with a message. And today we fixed multiple input logic, locking latest input. And then we fixed the perpetual skidding. Sweet. We're going to git push to our origin branch, or our origin repository on our main branch. And there we go. Okay. That's huge. Big success. Big success. That one was stumping me. But this is what we came up with. We just have the last input table and only do the logic based on the last input so that we don't accidentally overwrite certain commands based on multiple inputs being held. So that's huge. So next episode, we're going to be hopefully adding the last bit of logic to our player, which is to be able to change our direction while in the air upon flapping. So if we're going really fast, and then we face the other direction and then flap, our DX should be a little less, and then flap more, should be a little less until it hits 0, and then we flap a little more, and then we should be able to go to the other direction upon facing the right direction, or it's not even facing, it's holding a direction while in the air and flapping. So I don't think that'll be too tough. So we'll hopefully do that, and then we're gonna clean up, like, look at all of this commented out code that is no longer necessary. So we can review that, see if there's anything we need, tidy it up, get the order looking correct, at least so I can find stuff more reliably, because I kept losing my skid logic. So we'll tidy up all the commented out code. We'll organize what we do have left, and then we'll implement our new functionality of changing direction while in the air. But that's huge. That's working. And that was a big headache for a long time, including most of the first half of today. But I'm really happy with that. We already did our commit, so I think I'm going to call it a day. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope that was somewhat interesting for you. I thought today was a big success. Sweet. I'm looking forward to it. It's really cool that it's starting to feel more like the original. I mean, we are using the same kind of pixels for the player character, at least, but the spirit of the game is feeling like the original game, which is super cool. And I've got a ton of more respect for the developers after seeing just how complicated and elegant this game is, because one button can do so much in this game. And they only have 3 buttons. They have left and right and jump. So there's 3 buttons, and there's 12 or so combinations of what you can do, what those buttons can do, depending on what situation you're in. And then it'll be great to start. Now that we have an ostrich class, we can make enemy ostriches, give them stupid enemy ostrich AI where they're just walking around, and then we add collision for other ostriches. And that's when the game really takes off, because then we're going to be able to say, hey, if we bump and we're in the same height, we turn. If we bump and one joust is higher, you're dead and you turn into an egg. Then we get to do the cool egg transformation stuff, and then worry about all the platforms and pterodactyls, all that good stuff. I'm really excited about it. But yeah, really good day today.